He helped a fading alien stranger, not knowing she would return as his queen and the love of his life. It sat far from the bright trade lanes, far from Earth's loud cities and shining towers. Out here, the sky looked bigger, darker, and colder. The wind never stopped. The snow came sideways most days, like the planet was angry and couldn't say why. Elias Rowan liked it that way. His cabin stood alone beyond the colony fence, a small box of metal and stone with a thick heater and a single window. It wasn't comfort that mattered to him. It was distance. Distance from old memories. Distance from people who asked questions. Distance from the war that still lived behind his eyes when he tried to sleep. He used to be a combat medic. A good one. The kind who could keep a soldier breathing with one hand while firing a pistol with the other. The kind who learned to stop shaking after the first 100 screams. Then the war ended. They called it a peace. Elias called it an empty word. He came to Carthvale with a bag of tools and a silence he wore like armor. He repaired radios and water pumps for the colony. When they needed him, he took payment in fuel cells, canned food, and quiet. Most people didn't bother him. That was fine, but the planet didn't care what was fine. That night, the storm warnings came early. A crackling voice on the colony channel said, "Radiation front moving in. All personnel indoors. Repeat, all personnel indoors. Seal your doors. Stay off open comms unless emergency." Elias looked at the sky through his window. The clouds had a strange green tint, faint but real, the kind of color that made your teeth feel wrong. He checked his cabin seals, then checked them again. He pulled the storm shutters over the window and latched them tight. He set his small Geiger counter on the table. The needle twitched like a nervous animal. Then he waited. The storm arrived with a sound like grinding metal. It hit the cabin walls and made them shake. The wind screamed. The air outside filled with ice, dust, and glowing particles. The storm was not just weather. It was the planet's way of reminding everyone that humans did not belong here. Not really. Elias sat at his table with a cup of bitter tea. He listened to the Geiger counter click faster and faster. He didn't panic. Panic was for people who still believed the universe cared. He was halfway through the cup when the cabin's outer sensor gave a single sharp beep. Elias froze. The sensor only beeped for movement close to his fence line. Not wind, not drifting snow. Something solid. He set the tea down slowly. Another beep, then another. He stood and pulled on his heavy jacket and gloves. He grabbed a flashlight, a compact medkit, and a rifle he hoped he wouldn't need. He did not like carrying weapons anymore, but he liked dying even less. He opened the inner airlock door and stepped into the small entry chamber. The outer door showed a narrow view of white chaos through its reinforced glass. He checked the reading on the airlock panel. Radiation, high. Wind, severe. Visibility, near zero. Elias stared at the numbers. Every rule said stay inside. Then the sensor beeped again, closer this time, like something had stumbled nearer. He swore under his breath. "Fine," he muttered. "Fine." He keyed the outer door release. The storm slammed into him the second the door cracked open. Cold air punched his face through the mask. Snow whipped across his visor. The wind tried to shove him off his feet. He stepped out anyway, leaning forward, boots digging into the ice. The flashlight beam struggled in the blizzard, a weak yellow line that vanished after a few meters. His fence line was only 50 steps away, but it felt like walking into a moving wall. The Geiger counter in his pocket clicked fast enough to be a warning siren. He reached the fence and swept the light along it. At first, he saw nothing. Then the beam touched something dark against the snow. A shape, human-sized, maybe smaller. Elias moved closer, slow and careful. The wind howled in his ears. His heart hit hard against his ribs. He knelt, brushing snow aside with a gloved hand. The figure was a woman, or something close enough to make his brain say woman before it thought again. She lay on her side, one arm bent under her, hair spread like spilled ink across the ice. Her skin was pale, but not the sick pale of frostbite. It had a faint sheen, almost like pearl. Under the skin, thin lines of soft light glowed in patterns that reminded Elias of veins. Except veins didn't shine. Her clothing was not colony gear, not human gear. It looked like a single piece of dark fabric that didn't tear, didn't freeze, and somehow didn't collect snow. It hugged her like it belonged to her body, like it had grown there. Elias's first thought was a cold, sharp one. Alien. His second thought was worse. She was dying. Her breaths were short, shallow puffs that barely fogged the inside of her maskless face. Her lips were a faint blue. Her fingers were stiff, but not fully frozen. He shined the light near her head. There was a ridge along her skull, delicate and curved like a crown made from bone or crystal. It was not a helmet. It was part of her. Elias swallowed hard. The war flashed in his mind. Alien ships burning in space. Screams over comms. A friend bleeding out his arms while distant artillery turned the sky into fire. He forced the memory away. This was not the war. This was one person in the snow. His hands moved without asking permission. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck, searching for a pulse. It was there, weak, fast. He checked her pupils with the flashlight. They reacted, slowly. Her eyes were closed, but when he brushed snow from her cheek, her eyelids fluttered. She whispered something, soft, broken, not a language he knew. It sounded like a plea. Elias looked around, even though he knew he wouldn't see anything but storm. "How did you get here?" he said, voice muffled by his mask. No answer, only a weak exhale. He stared at her for a long second. Then he made the decision he would regret in at least 5 different ways. He unhooked a thermal blanket from his belt and wrapped it around her. It was meant for human bodies, but it would help keep heat in. He slid his arms under her shoulders and knees and lifted. She was lighter than he expected. Too light, like her bones were hollow or made from something different. The storm shoved at him. The fence wire hummed under static charge. His boot slipped once, and he tightened his grip to keep her from falling. "Don't die on me," he muttered, as if the universe cared about his request. He fought his way back to the cabin. Every step felt like walking through deep water. The Geiger counter clicked so fast it sounded like rain. Finally, he reached the airlock and stumbled inside, dragging the woman with him. The inner door sealed. The airlock cycle began, hissing warm air and filtering the storm's poison away. Elias laid her carefully on the floor and checked her again. Her skin was cold but not frozen. Her breathing was still there, barely. He pulled off his gloves and opened the med kit. He scanned her with a handheld diagnostic tool. The tool beeped, confused. It didn't know what it was looking at. "Of course you don't," Elias said. He tried again with manual checks. Warmth first, breathing, circulation. He placed heat packs along her core and under her arms. He used a small oxygen mask over her mouth and nose, adjusting the flow carefully. Her lips parted slightly. She drew in oxygen like a drowning person reaching air. Elias felt a small relief he didn't want to feel. He moved her into the main room and set her on his cot. He kept his rifle close, but he didn't point at her. That felt wrong. He cleaned a cut on her temple he hadn't noticed outside. The blood was not red. It was silver. Elias paused, staring at it. He had seen alien blood before. Different species, different colors, different smells. But this was clean and bright, like liquid metal. He touched the edge of the wound with antiseptic foam. The foam fizzed lightly, then settled. The woman's eyes opened. They were a deep, dark shade, almost black. But when the cabin light hit them, tiny sparks of color danced inside, like stars trapped in glass. She looked at him, not with anger, not with fear, with confusion and a tired kind of hope. She tried to speak. Her voice was weak. "Savon." Elias leaned closer. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe. For now." Her gaze moved to the room, taking in the plain human cabin. Tools on the wall, a heater humming, a small table, a single chair. Then her eyes returned to him. She lifted a hand, trembling. Her fingers brushed his sleeve. Elias felt the touch through the fabric anyway. It was warmer than it should have been. Like her skin held a gentle heat inside it. Her lips moved again. "Vale, Ruin." Elias blinked. "Is that your name?" She breathed out and nodded once, very small. "A name, a person, not just alien." Elias exhaled slowly. His chest felt tight. My name is Elias, he said, tapping his own chest. Elias. She watched him carefully, as if storing the sound. Her eyes fluttered, her breathing hitched. Suddenly, the lights in the cabin flickered. The heater stuttered. Elias turned sharply toward the power panel. The cabin systems gave a warning beep. Then another. The woman arched slightly, as if in pain. The glowing lines under her skin brightened, spreading like light through water. Elias stepped back. Hey, what's happening? She gasped and the glow flashed. A pulse of pale blue light exploded outward from her body. Every device in the room died at once. The heater went silent. The lights went out. The comm panel went dark. The cabin fell into heavy, sudden quiet. Elias stood in darkness, heart pounding. Outside, the storm still screamed. Inside, the only light came from the faint glow under the woman's skin, fading slowly like dying embers. And somewhere beyond Carthvale, far out in the cold space between stars, something had just been called. Elias didn't know it yet, but the universe had heard, and it was coming. The cabin stayed dark for 3 long minutes. Elias did not move. He stood still, listening to the storm outside and the slow breathing from the cot behind him. The air felt heavy, too quiet. The heater was dead. The power panel showed nothing but black. Only the faint silver-blue glow under the alien woman's skin gave light to the room. Then, slowly, the glow faded. The Geiger counter on the table clicked once, then stopped completely. Dead. Great. Elias muttered under his breath. He moved carefully to the emergency locker and pulled out an old battery lantern. He switched it on. Soft yellow light filled the cabin again. The woman lay still on the cot. Her chest rose and fell in a weak rhythm. Whatever pulse she had released had taken something from her. He checked her pulse again. Still alive. He let out a breath he did not know he was holding. The storm lasted until morning. Elias did not sleep. He repaired what he could once the radiation levels dropped. The main power core had overloaded but not burned out. It took him hours to reset it. The comm system was fried beyond simple repair. That bothered him more than anything. He did not like being cut off. By midday, the sky cleared. Pale sunlight reflected off endless white ground. It looked peaceful. It was not. Inside the cabin, the alien woman finally woke fully. Her eyes opened slowly. This time they were clear, aware. She looked around with sharp focus. Her gaze landed on Elias, who sat in the chair near the cot, cleaning a tool. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then she tried to sit up. Pain crossed her face, but she did not cry out. Elias stood immediately. Slow, he said calmly. You were almost frozen outside. She did not understand his words, but she understood his tone. He raised a hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. She watched every movement carefully. Not scared. Alert. Elias picked up his small translation tablet. It was one of the few devices that survived the pulse. Old, basic, limited alien language files. He activated it and selected open spectrum translation mode. The device made a soft tone. He pointed at himself. Elias. The device repeated it in mechanical tones. She listened. Then she touched her own chest. Aerith. The tablet tried to copy the sound and failed badly. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. Elias, she said carefully, adjusting her mouth around the unfamiliar sound. He gave a small nod. Yes. Progress. She looked down at her hands. The glow under her skin was dim now, almost invisible. She flexed her fingers as if checking if they still belonged to her. Then her eyes moved to the window. Her expression changed. Not fear, calculation. She spoke several words quickly. The tablet struggled, but managed to catch fragments. Signal transmitted. Elias froze. What signal? The tablet translated his words slowly. Her gaze returned to him. There was something like regret in her expression. Emergency beacon. The tablet translated from her speech. Royal distress code. Royal. Elias stared at her. Royal, he repeated. She gave a small nod. The room felt smaller. You're not just some lost traveler, he said quietly. She straightened slightly, even in weakness. Crown Air, the tablet translated. House Veilrun, Serity Dominion. The words meant nothing and everything at once. Serity, Elias knew that name. Every soldier from the war knew it. The Serity Dominion was one of the strongest alien powers in known space. Advanced ships, elegant technology, dangerous diplomacy. They were not officially enemies of humanity anymore, but they were not friends either. And the woman sitting on his cot was their crown heir. Elias leaned back slowly into his chair. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered. Aerith watched him carefully. She spoke again, slower this time. "Assassination," the tablet translated. "Internal betrayal. My transport destroyed. Escape pod damage. Landed here." She looked at him directly. "You saved my life." The simple sentence landed heavily in the quiet room. Elias rubbed his face with his hand. "So that pulse last night," he began. "Beacon reached Dominion Fleet," the tablet said after her reply. "They will come." "How long?" She paused, calculating. "Days." Elias stood and walked to the window. Outside, the colony's distant buildings stood quiet under the sun. Days. If a Dominion fleet entered this system without warning, the colony defense forces would panic. They were miners, farmers, engineers, not soldiers ready to face warships the size of cities. He turned back to her. "Will they attack?" Her eyes hardened slightly. "If they believe I am harmed," she said. The words were simple. The meaning was not. Before Elias could respond, a distant rumble shook the cabin. Not from the ground, from the sky. Elias moved past the window and pulled the shutter aside. High above the atmosphere, streaks of light burned across the blue sky. Ships, large ones, not human design. They were sleek, curved, almost organic in shape. Silver hulls reflecting sunlight like blades. 3 massive vessels held position in orbit. Smaller escort ships surrounded them like protective wolves. Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. "They're early," he whispered. Inside the cabin, Era stood slowly from the cot. She walked to the window beside him. For a moment, she looked almost relieved. Then her expression shifted. More ships dropped from warp at the edge of orbit. But these were different. Their hulls were darker, their formation aggressive. Aerith's jaw tightened. "Not loyal fleet," she said. The tablet translated quickly. "Coup faction." Elias stared upward. "How many?" She watched the sky carefully. "Too many." As if answering her, the sky flashed. Energy beams lanced across orbit. One of the silver ships jerked violently as shields flared bright blue. The battle had started. Down in the colony, sirens began to scream. Elias grabbed his old comm receiver and tried to raise colony command. Static answered him. The earlier pulse had damaged long-range systems. He cursed softly. Aerith turned to him. "They will search planet," she said. "For you?" "Yes." "And if they find you?" She held his gaze steadily. "I will not survive." Simple, direct. Elias felt anger rise in his chest. Not fear. Not yet. Anger. He had dragged her from the snow. He had fought a radiation storm to keep her alive. Now warships were tearing the sky apart because of her. He looked at her again. She did not look like a weapon. She looked tired, determined, alone. "What do you need?" he asked finally. The question surprised even him. Aerith seemed surprised too. "Secure location," she said. "Time to contact Loyal Command." Elias nodded once. "I know a place." 2 hours later, they stood inside an abandoned mining tunnel deep beneath the colony outskirts. The tunnel had been closed years ago after collapse. Elias had helped seal it. He also knew a side passage most people forgot. He led her through narrow stone corridors lit only by portable lamps. The air smelled of dust and old metal. Above them, faint vibrations trembled through the rock. Orbital battle continued. Elias stopped in a wider chamber. "This should block most scans," he said. "Rock is thick." Aerith placed her palm against the stone wall. The faint glow under her skin brightened again, but weaker than before. She closed her eyes. A thin beam of light projected from a ridge along her skull, forming shifting symbols in the air. Elias stared. "Encrypted royal channel." She explained as the tablet worked hard to translate. Minutes passed. Finally, a holographic figure flickered into existence before them. Tall, Cerati, armored in elegant metallic plates. He dropped to one knee instantly. "My sovereign heir," the figure said in a deep voice, the tablet translating clearly. "We feared you lost." "I live," Aerith answered firmly. The armored figure's eyes shifted to Elias. "And the human?" A pause. Then Aerith said something Elias did not expect. "He is under my protection." The words echoed in the chamber. The armored figure bowed his head slightly. "Then he is under Dominion protection." Elias blinked. That was new. But before relief could settle in, the hologram flickered violently. "Enemy fleet breaking through outer defense." The armored Cerati reported. "Coup flagship descending toward planetary surface." Aerith's eyes sharpened. "They know I survived," she said quietly. The hologram nodded. "They will not stop." The image vanished. Silence filled the tunnel again. Elias looked at her. "So it's not just a rescue mission," he said. "No," she replied softly. "It is a hunt." Above them, the ground trembled harder. Dust fell from the ceiling. Elias exhaled slowly. "All right," he said, voice steady now. "Then we don't wait to be found." Aerith studied him. "You would fight." He gave a small, humorless smile. "I used to patch soldiers up after fights. Maybe it's time I join one again." Outside, something massive entered the atmosphere. The sound rolled across the planet like distant thunder. A shadow passed briefly over the tunnel entrance. The Coup faction had arrived. And this time, they were not just searching. They were coming for their queen. The ground shook again. Dust drifted from the ceiling of the old mining tunnel. Small rocks rolled across the floor. Somewhere far above, something massive moved through the sky. Elias looked toward the tunnel entrance, jaw tight. "They're landing," he said. Aerith stood in the center of the chamber, calm but alert. The soft glow beneath her skin had returned, brighter now. "Not strong yet, but growing. They will deploy ground forces," she said. "They will search every structure, every life sign." Elias ran a hand through his hair. "The colony isn't ready for this." He activated his short-range comm unit. Static hissed, but a weak signal came through. "Colony Command, this is Rowan. Do you copy?" After a few seconds, a strained voice answered. "Rowan, where the hell are you? We have unknown alien forces entering atmosphere. Defense grid is failing." "I know," Elias replied calmly. "Listen carefully. The target isn't the colony." There was a pause. "What do you mean?" "They're here for someone. If we hand her over, they'll leave." Silence followed that. Then, "You're hiding one of them?" Elias glanced at Aerith. "Yes." Another long pause. "Rowan, do you understand what you're saying? Those ships out there could wipe us out." "I understand," he said quietly, "but she's not the enemy." Before Command could answer, a distant explosion shook the tunnel. The sound rolled through the rock like thunder trapped underground. Aerith closed her eyes briefly. "They have begun scanning the surface," she said. Elias made a decision. "Command," he said into the comm, voice firm now. "If we give her up, they don't stop. Not long term. They'll see us as weak. Today it's one person. Tomorrow it's territory. You're asking us to fight a fleet?" The voice demanded. "I'm asking you to stand your ground." The line went quiet again. Then another voice joined the channel. Older, steadier. "This is Governor Hale." Elias straightened slightly. "Governor, we saw the orbital battle. We saw the Second Fleet enter. If this is a political war, we are in the middle whether we like it or not." "Yes," Elias said. "Is she important?" Elias looked at Aerith. She met his eyes but did not speak. "She's the crown heir of the Cerati Dominion." A sharp intake of breath echoed over the comm. "That's not possible." "It is." More silence. Then Governor Hale spoke slowly. "If we protect her, will her people protect us?" Aerith stepped closer. "Ask her," Elias said softly. He switched the comm speaker on. "She can hear you." Aerith spoke clearly, her voice steady. "I am Aerith Veilrun. If you shield me, I bind my house to defend this colony. This I swear under Dominion law." The translation unit, relayed her words. On the other end, voices murmured. Governor Hale returned. Rowan, this puts us in open conflict. Elias's gaze hardened. They already fired first. Above ground, another explosion boomed. The sound of energy weapons echoed faintly even through the rock. Governor Hale exhaled. Very well. Colony defense will mobilize. We stand with you. The calm cut. Elias looked at Aerith. Well, he said, guess we're doing this. On the surface, chaos spread across Karthvale. Coup faction dropships pierced the clouds like black spears. They landed beyond the colony perimeter and released tall, armored Cerati soldiers. Their armor shimmered dark violet, sharp and aggressive in design. They moved fast. Scanning devices swept across buildings. Drones rose into the sky, searching. But the colony did not wait. Mining haulers, large, ugly machines built to carry ore, were quickly modified. Engineers bolted old missile pods onto their frames. Welding sparks filled the air as civilians worked without stopping. Farmers picked up old rifles stored from the early settlement days. Retired security officers reactivated defense turrets that had not been used in years. They were not a military force, but they were not helpless. In orbit, the loyal Cerati fleet struggled to hold the upper atmosphere. Bright flashes lit the sky as ships exchanged heavy fire. Back underground, Elias handed Aerith a compact pulse weapon he kept from the war. She examined it with curiosity. Crude, she said. Effective, he replied. A faint smile touched her lips. They moved toward the tunnel exit. As they reached the entrance, Elias stopped. You don't have to fight, he said quietly. Aerith looked at him, surprised. They want you alive. Me, they'll shoot. Her expression softened. They want me dead, she corrected. Alive, I threaten them. She stepped closer. I will not hide while others bleed in my name. Elias studied her face. No fear, only resolve. He nodded once. All right then. The first enemy patrol reached the colony outskirts within minutes. For armored Cerati, soldiers advanced through the snow, scanning equipment glowing red in their hands. A mining hauler roared from behind a storage building, engine screaming. It slammed directly into one of the soldiers, knocking him aside with brutal force. The other three reacted instantly, firing controlled bursts of blue energy. The hauler's front armor melted, but not before two human defenders opened fire from rooftop positions. Gunfire cracked across the cold air. One Cerati fell. The others raised shield barriers. It was not clean. It was not perfect, but it was resistance. Elias and Aerith reached a ridge overlooking the colony. Below them, small battles erupted across the settlement. Elias exhaled slowly. They're braver than I expected. Aerith watched with wide eyes. They fight for one life, she said quietly. Yes. Why? Elias did not answer at first. Then he said, because we're stubborn. She looked at him again. No, she said softly, because you care. Before he could respond, 3 enemy soldiers appeared on the ridge opposite them. They had tracked a signal from Aerith's earlier transmission. Weapons raised. Elias reacted first, firing 2 quick shots. One struck a soldier's shoulder joint, forcing him down. The others returned fire. Energy blasts scorched the rock near Elias's feet. He dove behind cover. Aerith stepped forward instead of back. Her skin flared bright silver. The ridge along her skull glowed intensely. A pulse of concentrated light shot from her hand, not wide like before, but focused. It struck the nearest enemy's shield and shattered it like glass. The soldier stumbled. Elias rose and fired again, precise and controlled. The threat fell. The last soldier hesitated. For a split second, Aerith locked eyes with him. Stand down, she commanded in her native tongue. The authority in her voice was unmistakable. The soldier froze, then slowly lowered his weapon. Elias blinked. Remind me not to argue with you, he muttered. Aerith's glow faded slightly. She swayed. Elias caught her before she fell. You're pushing too hard, he said. I must show strength, she replied weakly. Alive first, strong later. Below them, a new shadow crossed the snow. The Coup flagship had descended into low atmosphere. It was enormous. Dark hull curved like a blade, ready to strike. Energy gathered along its underside. Elias stared upward. That doesn't look friendly. Aerith's expression darkened. That is General Kaler's ship, leader of the coup. As if summoned by her words, a transmission blasted across every open frequency. A tall Cerati figure appeared on every colony screen. His armor was black and gold. His eyes cold. Aerith Veilrun, he said, voice amplified. Your resistance is pointless. Surrender, and this world survives. Silence followed. Elias felt every colonist waiting. Aerith stepped forward into the open snow. Elias grabbed her arm. What are you doing? She gently removed his hand. Trust me. She activated the colony's broadcast tower. Her image appeared beside Kaler's. I am Aerith Veilrun, she declared clearly, crown heir of the Cerati Dominion. You dishonor our people with this treachery. Kaler's expression hardened. You are weak. You seek protection from primitives. Aerith's voice did not shake. They are not primitives. They are allies. She turned slightly, gesturing toward the colony. They fight, though outmatched. They stand, though afraid. That is strength. Kaler's eyes narrowed. Then they will fall with you. The flagship's main weapon began to charge. Energy built like a rising star. Elias looked at Aerith. Got any big royal tricks left? He asked. She looked up at the ship. Yes, she said quietly. High above, the loyal Cerati fleet broke through enemy lines. 3 silver warships dove toward the flagship at full burn. The sky exploded in light. Energy beams clashed. Shields flared. The air shook violently. Elias grabbed Aerith as shock waves hit the ground. Snow blasted outward in rings. Above them, the cool flagship shield shattered under combined assault. One final beam from the loyal fleet pierced its hull. The dark ship ruptured in a silent burst of white light. Fragments burned in the atmosphere. On the ground, remaining coup forces faltered. Some dropped their weapons. Some fled. Within minutes, the battle ended. Smoke rose from damaged buildings. Snow melted where energy had struck. Elias slowly released Aerith. She stared at the sky where the flagship had been. It is done, she whispered. He looked at her. Not quite, he said. In orbit, the loyal Cerati fleet formed a new pattern. One massive silver ship began descending toward the colony, not to attack, to land. And this time, they were coming not as hunters, but to kneel. The sky above Karth Vale burned gold as the massive silver warship descended. It did not fall like the dark flagship had. It moved slowly, controlled, powerful. Snow lifted in spirals as gravity engines pushed against the ground. The colony buildings trembled, but this time there was no fear in the air, only silence. Humans stood in the open snow, watching. Farmers, mechanics, miners, old veterans with shaking hands. Young workers who had never seen real war before today. Elias stood beside Aerith on the ridge, overlooking the colony. He could feel the heat from the descending ship against his face. You're sure about this? He asked quietly. Aerith's silver eyes remained on the warship. Yes, she said. This ends today. The ship settled just beyond the colony perimeter. Its hull shimmered like polished moonlight. A ramp unfolded from its side, long and smooth. From the opening, tall Cerati soldiers emerged. But they did not march with weapons raised. They walked in formation, blades lowered, armor gleaming in the sunlight. At their center came a single figure, older than Aerith. His armor was white and silver, decorated with thin lines of blue light. A long crest curved over his head, like a crown shaped by centuries. He stopped 10 steps away from Aerith. Every Cerati soldier behind him dropped to one knee. The older figure followed. My sovereign, he said, voice clear and strong. The translation unit at Elias's side repeated the words in English. My sovereign, we failed to protect you. Aerith stepped forward. You did not fail, she replied. You fought. The older Cerati lowered his head deeper. The cool leaders are destroyed. Their loyalists surrender across Dominion space. Your claim is secure. Aerith's shoulders straightened. She did not look like the weak stranger Elias had found in the snow. She looked like a ruler. I accept command, she said. A soft ripple passed through the kneeling soldiers. The Dominion had its queen. Governor Hale approached slowly from behind Elias, flanked by colony security. He stopped a respectful distance away. I assume this is a part where we hope they don't change their minds, Hale muttered quietly. Elias gave a small smile. They won't. Aerith turned toward the humans. She walked across the snow until she stood between both groups. Cerity and human. Her voice carried clearly in the cold air. People of Karthvale, she said, the translator projecting her words through colony speakers. You stood against a fleet for one life. She looked at the damaged buildings, the burned snow, the wounded being treated near emergency tents. You owed me nothing, she continued. Yet you fought. Governor Hale stepped forward. We protect those under our roof, he replied simply. Aerith studied him. That is why you are strong. She turned back toward the kneeling Cerity commander. House Vailrun binds itself to Karthvale, she declared. This colony stands under Dominion protection. Murmurs spread through humans. Protection from one of the strongest powers in the galaxy. That was no small thing. But Aerith was not finished. She turned slightly and looked at Elias. For a moment, the world felt quiet again. He shifted uncomfortably under the attention. She walked toward him. The Cerity soldiers watched carefully. The humans watched even closer. She stopped directly in front of him. You saved my life, she said, her voice softer now. Elias shrugged lightly. You were freezing. You chose compassion, she corrected. He did not know what to say to that. The older Cerity commander stepped forward slightly. My queen, he said carefully. Tradition requires strengthening alliances after civil war. The High Council will expect. Aerith raised her hand gently. He fell silent. I know what they expect, she said. She looked at Elias again. In our law, she continued, a life debt is sacred. It binds two souls beyond politics. The translation unit hesitated slightly on the word souls, then settled. Elias blinked. You don't have to do anything because of that, he said quietly. A faint smile touched her lips. I am not acting from debt. She stepped even closer. I choose. The word hung in the cold air. The Cerity commander looked shocked. Even some of the soldiers shifted. Aerith turned to face both groups. I choose Elias Rowan, she declared. As my life bond. As my equal. Gasps spread to the humans. Silence fell among the Cerity. Elias felt like someone had just dropped him from orbit without warning. Aerith, he said softly, I'm just a medic. She met his eyes steadily. You are a man who carried a stranger through a radiation storm. She paused. You are enough. The simplicity of it left him without defense. Governor Hale cleared his throat quietly. Well, he muttered, that's one way to secure an alliance. The older Cerity commander straightened slowly. My queen, this is unprecedented. Yes, Aerith replied calmly. It is. She extended her hand toward Elias. For a second, he hesitated, not because he did not care, but because he understood what this meant. Leaving Karthvale, stepping into a galaxy that once burned in war, becoming part of something far larger than himself. He looked at the colony, at the people who had stood and fought, at the snow-covered ground where he had first found her. Then he looked back at her. You're sure? He asked quietly. I have never been more certain, she answered. He took her hand. Her skin was warm, stronger now. A soft silver glow wrapped around their joined hands. It was gentle, not blinding, like moonlight on water. The Cerity soldiers bowed their heads fully. My queen, they said together. Elias swallowed. This is going to be complicated, he murmured. Aerith's eyes sparkled slightly. Yes, she agreed. Weeks later, Karthvale looked different. Dominion engineers worked beside human mechanics, repairing damage and improving infrastructure. Advanced shield arrays rose around the colony. Medical centers received new technology far beyond anything they had before. Joint patrol ships began orbiting the planet, not as conquerors, as guardians. Across human space, news spread quickly. A frontier colony had stood against a Dominion coup fleet. A human had become life bond to a Cerity queen. Some governments were nervous. Some were impressed. Other alien powers watched carefully. Humanity, once seen as unpredictable and divided, had shown something unexpected. They would fight for one of their own, even if that one was not human. On the day of departure, Elias stood once more outside his cabin. The monument had already been placed near the fence line. Simple stone, simple words. Compassion changes galaxies. He stared at it for a long moment. You could stay, Governor Hale said behind him. Elias shook his head slightly. She needs someone who remembers what it means to be human, he replied. Hale smiled faintly. Don't start a second war out there. No promises, Elias said dryly. Behind him, the Silver Dominion ship waited. Eris stood at the ramp, dressed now in elegant royal armor. Not heavy, not aggressive, balanced. She watched him approach. Nervous? She asked softly. Only about 100 different things, he admitted. She stepped closer. You will not walk alone. He looked at her. Neither will you. Together, they walked up the ramp. The ship lifted slowly from Karth Vale's surface. Below, humans and Cerati stood side by side in the snow. As the ship entered orbit, the stars opened before them. Elias looked out at the endless darkness. Funny, he said quietly. What is? Aerith asked. I came here to be alone. She tilted her head slightly. And now, he watched the stars. Now I'm apparently married to a queen. Aerith laughed softly, a sound light and clear. Life is unpredictable, she said. Yes, he agreed. It is. She reached for his hand again, and this time there was no storm, no warships hunting, only a future neither of them could fully see. But they would face it together, in a galaxy ruled by power, fleets, and ancient empires. Humanity had proven something far more dangerous. They protect the ones they love, no matter the cost.